They murdered up to 16 people, denied all knowledge of these crimes, protesting his innocence and blaming everything on Burke. Burke, on the strength of this, was duly hanged, and his body was sent to the medical school as his victims before him had been, and Hare was pardoned and he fled from the city. And that's a true story, the very well-known Edinburgh tale of Burke and Hare. There's theatre, and then just ahead on our left, along this street here on our left, is the Lyceum Theatre. So a concert hall and two theatres in that area there on our left-hand side. And great big heavy stone balls. And these balls are big versions of small balls, which you can see in the Museum of Scotland, about the size of a cricket ball. And they're beautifully carved. And the archaeologists have been finding them in Orkney. Nobody knows what these balls were used for, whether they were, well, if they had a use, perhaps they could use them for trading, or perhaps it was part of a game, or perhaps it was just to show what a skilled craftsperson you were, and you could make these beautiful stone balls. But they are lovely, and as I say, you can see them in the New Museum of Scotland, which we will be passing later on, and I'll point it out. That travellers would have used in the olden days when they were coming from the west into the old town of Edinburgh. They would have taken the same route as we're taking today. And of course, I've mentioned already, the old town of Edinburgh was a walled city, a fortified city, and our city wall is 6 ports or gates that will go here. You might want to stop off at the Grass Market, either now or later on. You can leave the bus, have a good look round at the Grass Market. And there are many bars, houses where the cattle and the sheep were brought overnight to be safe in behind the city wall, be kept here overnight, and then the following morning they'd be taken back out through the city wall to the fields for the grazing. And high up on the left, a wee bit hard to see, and behind the trees, there's a lovely view again of Edinburgh Castle, this time from the south side. And good morning and welcome to those of you just joining us on the tour. I think it's going to be quite busy. James Connolly was born in the Cowgate, which is part of the old town of Edinburgh, and he was a freedom fighter who was fighting for home rule for Ireland. And the Cowgate is straight ahead. We're going to veer off to the right-hand side, but the Cowgate is ahead, and that is where James Connolly... You will see the statue of wee Bobby sitting on what used to be a drinking fountain. Just ahead on our left-hand side. And there at the end of these black railings, right beside the bus on the left-hand side, at pavement level, right down beside the bus there on the left, you can see the statue of wee Bobby. Just up this wee street here on our right, and for 14 years this brave dog Bobby sat in his master's grave, pining for his master, and then when wee Bobby died, he was very close to his master. And that's another true story, and you can buy a copy of the book in any of the many bookshops in the city. And on our left-hand side is the New Museum of Scotland, and that's where you'll see the original small balls that I pointed out the big versions of outside the hotel. The students graduate, and this on our left-hand side is the medical school. And of course this is where the grave robbers and where Burke and Hare brought the bodies to sell to Dr. Knox and his young medical students. And this is very much the university part of the city we're in now. And ahead on the left-hand side, again, you can see the New Museum of Scotland. It's got a roof garden, Royal Museum of Scotland. These museums are interconnected. You can wander between the two and they're free to get into. So do visit them if you get the opportunity. A lot of the buildings belong to the university here. This on the right-hand side is Edinburgh Old College, the University Old College of Edinburgh, which lay between the old and the about to be constructed new. So 3 ways were created to make a bridge between the old and the new. And the North Bridge was the first of the 3 bridges to be built, and it was built in 1897 to make a link between the old and the new. Street ahead to both the right and the left-hand side. As I say, we're meeting up with it about halfway down. And the Royal Mile is called the Royal Mile because it's got Edinburgh Castle at one end and the Palace of Holyrood at the other end, a royal building at each end, so it is called the Royal Mile. And the Royal Mile is ants or tenements, and they were built with no running water and no sanitation, and you had to come out of your house and draw your water from one of our wells at the Royal Mile. And the garbage system was very primitive. The garbage system was that at 10 o'clock at night, one of the town guard came round banging on a drum, and that was the signal of the cistern. But it was an awful lot more than just water that came down, bearing in mind these people had no sanitation. And we're approaching a bus stop now, for those who want to leave the bus. And forgetting the castle, just walk straight up the hill the way we've done. And the Museum of Childhood here on the right hand side will be shut tomorrow, so don't put it in your itinerary for tomorrow, you will be disappointed. On the left hand side is the John Knox house. John Knox was a religious reformer, and he was in the city in the mid to late 1500s, and he was challenging the supremacy of the Roman Catholic Church. He himself was a Protestant, and these very troubled times were known as the Reformation. And until the Reformation, Scotland was purely a Catholic country, but John Knox came along with his teachings of Luther and Calvin, a movement that swept across Europe from Switzerland and Germany. And John Knox's mob destroyed our beautiful cathedrals, burned the roofs off them, smashed up the pretty things within, and changed our religion to the Protestant religion. But as I say, until those times, the mid to late 1500s, Scotland was purely a Catholic country. Model of carving of the proto-gate street at this junction, facing up the hill towards us. So this used to be the end of Edinburgh. So you can see now it was very, very small, the old town of Edinburgh used to be. It stretched from the castle to this junction we're just going through, a matter of less than half a... And you can see part of our city wall. There's a close just towards the back of the bus on the right-hand side, which is called Tweeddale Court. And if you go down Tweeddale Court, you can see part of the old city wall, the old fortifications of the old town of Edinburgh. As I say, very small and very manageable. And on our left-hand side is the Cannon King on the right-hand side. It's called Queensberry House, and it had become very neglected, very dilapidated, but it's all been done up and it's very beautiful. And this building is going to form the basis of the Donald Dewar Library. Our first minister here in Scotland, when we got our own parliament 5 years ago come July, he was a man called Donald Dewar, and sadly he died. But he's got a huge collection of books which I believe are going to come into this building here on our right hand side. We've still got the banking, even more than ever I think of that, and bookbinding could now be book publishing, so not a lot has changed, but of course now we have tourism. The construction of our new Scottish Parliament is meant to be ready by the summer, and the official opening is the 9th of October. So I hope it's ready by then. And there on the left again you can see into the palace and the Abbey of Holyrood, which of course you can visit. The hill straight ahead is Arthur's Seat, the biggest of our 7 volcanic hills. Arthur's Seat is a scheduled ancient monument, and it's also a designated special site of scenic and scientific interest. Open to the public all year round and much appreciated by us all. When you're walking in Arthur's Seat, you would think you're in the Highlands of Scotland and not the capital city of Scotland. And for all that Arthur's Seat is called Arthur's Seat, the historians are sure that there's no connection whatsoever with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Even if they did exist, it's thought as much more likely that the phrase Arthur's Seat is taken from the Gaelic. Gaelic, of course, being the old language of Scotland, taken from a Gaelic expression, Ardna Said, which means height of the arrows. And it's thought that perhaps the archers practiced their archery skills up on Arthur's Seat. But nobody's really very certain. That's just one of them on the right-hand side. And you can go there and learn all about geology from the Big Bang right up to the present. It was built for the millennium, and it's very educational. A lot of school children are brought along for visits which they thoroughly enjoy. If you just stay seated, we'll get the bus stop, it's safer that way. And what you can do, you can leave the bus at our dynamic curve, and you don't have an hour to get up the topmost point, depending on how fast you go, how often you stop, and take photographs, which is and stay in the space and relax. Mouth open, and that used to be our battle flag of Scotland. The Pilgrims, and then just after that, sometime after that, it was greatly expanded on by the royal family into what we now know as the Palace of Holyrood. Mary, Queen of Scots, our queen who was on the throne during the 1500s, she was half French, she used to stay at the palace. Her mother, Mary of Guise, spent time there as well. Just walk back slightly and cross over on the green crossing, and then walk down the side of where you see the railings there on the right hand side, and then cross over that path, and that takes you to the area where you buy your tickets. And of course, if you want to pick up a bus again, just get yourselves back to this bus stop, and you'll not need to wait longer than 15-20 minutes for a bus to come around and pick you up, and you can continue with your tour. And we're looking at it from a distance now, and you can clearly see the topmost point, which is the old volcanic plug, standing at 822 feet high. There's nobody living in Arthur's Seat now, but it has been populated in the past. They have found Bronze Age remains and also ancient cultivation terraces up on Arthur's Seat. And up on the roof of the palace you can see one of our Scottish flags, the lion flag. Rabbie Burns, of course, wrote out fine poems as My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose, A Man's a Man for All That, Scots Were Hay, Coming Through the Eye, and of course Auld Lang Syne, which we sing so happily at New Year, or Hogmanay as we call it here in Scotland. Architecture. And this building here on the right hand side used to be the Royal High School for Boys. It's now standing empty, and hopefully a use will be found for it quite soon. But a very beautiful building indeed, and the reason it's become quite darkened, the stone's quite darkened, is because somewhere on the left hand side, about 130 years ago or so, there was a gasworks, and for making town gas they burned coal, and the soot and the smoke and the crime just went straight on 5 Minutes Hill. So no excuses, do go up here if you get the opportunity. On a nice day like today, you can see all over the city and the surrounding area. 67 by the city fathers. Up till then, of course, everyone was living in the old town, the rich and the poor alike. And the rich people were getting fed up with this situation, and they want a new town to live in. So this competition to build a new town was held, and it was won by a very young man called James Craig. He was only 23 when he won the competition, and the building of the new town went ahead. But 200 years ago, there's nothing here. All this was countryside, and everyone was packed like sardines into the old town, which you can't see at the moment, but you soon will. This large building on the right-hand side is Register House, or our Scottish Archives, and Register House was purpose-built to house all our legal documents in Scotland. Exciting, and the horse is Copenhagen. And then on the left-hand side you can see the North Bridge. I pointed out the North Bridge when we were at the other side of it. The North Bridge, of course, was the first link created to make the link between the old town and the about to be constructed new town, where we are now. Ahead on the left-hand side through the traffic lights is the Balmoral Hotel, a railway hotel built when rail travel was in its heyday, and you can see the clocks up at the top. And because it's a railway hotel to this day, the clocks are always kept 2 or 3 minutes fast so that you don't miss your train. That is the Salt Tower on the St Andrew's Cross. St Andrew being our patron saint of Scotland. And on the far left-hand side of the roof of the Prince's Mall is the Edinburgh Tourist Information Centre. I'm sure you've found it for yourselves already, but if you haven't, that's the place to go. The link between the old and the new. And on our left-hand side, you'll see a very, very tall monument, and that is the Scott Monument, a monument to Sir Walter Scott, a very famous Scottish writer, who wrote such fine books as The Fair Maid of Pears, The Heart of Midlothian, and the Waverley Novels. And for a small fee, you can climb all the way up to the top if you're feeling energetic. Visit Jenner's if you get the opportunity.
Jenner's the Harrods
buy
Edinburg
designer clothing in. And there's cafes as well.
Jenner's.
So there's something really social. Right-hand side, you can see the garden. Remember, and we share our patron saint with Russia, Poland, and Greece. We've all got St. Andrew. Now this is George Street that we're in.
St. Andrews.
These are carried out here in George Street, and there's a couple of people leaving from the top. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. And this beautiful building on the left-hand side used to be the headquarters of a bank. But of course nowadays you can bank by computer, you can bank by telephone, and a lot of the banks are selling off their headquarters and they're being turned into bars, cafes and restaurants. So a beautiful building. It's a listed building which means of architectural heritage and historic importance, and all the beautiful original So do, if you're passing, do go and have a wee look around. I'm going to say it was in Scotland in 1822. There hadn't been a monarch up in Scotland for almost 200 years, but nonetheless, when King George got off his ship at the port of Leith, He was warmly welcomed by the clansmen, all wearing their beautiful kilts. And King George was so inspired at this site that he too wanted a kilt. He went off and got a kilt made. It was tiny, it was a disaster, it was a mini kilt. And as if that wasn't bad enough, he then insisted upon wearing a pair of pink silk tights beneath his kilt. And I'm sure, of course, you all know that that is not traditionally what should be worn beneath the queue. When you look straight ahead, you're looking to the north. And if you were to continue to the north, keeping straight number of sheep, and our population here in Edinburgh is about 500,000 people. And you could fit the population of Scotland 3 times in the population of London alone. So we are a very small nation.
5 million people चाहिए sheep कितने से? Double है? Oh.
Now the next street that we're going to visit, the beautiful houses on one side and the private gardens for the residents who live in this area on the left-hand side. Now ahead on the right-hand side, you will soon see a red door, number 17, Harriet Row, and this used to be the home of Robert Louis Stevenson, a very famous Scottish writer. Just where the silver people carrier is outside, on the right-hand side, number 17, Harriet Row. It's a private house now, but as I say, it used to be the home of Robert Louis Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote such fine books as Treasure Island, Kidnapped, Travels with a Donkey, Across the Plains, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll. He's only 44 years old. He was born in 1850 and he died in 1894. Now, if you look at the buildings round about here, all these buildings were built to be residential, but you can see shopping, cafes, bars, restaurants, offices have all taken over. But these buildings were built to be residential, with 4 levels above the pavement, and then both a basement and a sub-basement beneath the pavement. So we're talking about 6 levels with an average of 18 rooms per house. And when the first rich families moved in, when these buildings were newly built, it was the rich people, of course, who moved from the old town to come and live in the new town. And when they moved into these houses, they would have moved in with a battery of at least 6 servants to do all the hard work for them. And if you look to the rooftops round about, you can see row upon row upon row of chimneys, or lums as we call them in Scotland. And if you can imagine all these lums round about all smoking away at the once, which of course they frequently used to do, Edinburgh gradually became a very, very smoky town indeed. So much so that Edinburgh eventually acquired the nickname of Auld Reekie, which means Old Smoky. And of course really nowadays the title hardly applies because so many people have got central heating. This stone that we use for building, and during our times of Auld Reekie, many of our buildings have become quite dark, feel now that if chemicals are used, the chemicals can weaken the stone. So as I say, our City of Edinburgh Council have now got a policy of not cleaning the buildings at all. And as we go through the junction again, if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see our beautiful view to the... Now Edinburgh's got another nickname besides the nickname of Auld Reekie, and Edinburgh's other nickname is the Athens of the North. Nothing whatsoever to do with our climate, but everything to do with our style of architecture. Our very classic features, domes, pillars, columns, arches, spires, stone carvings, statues, all contribute to Edinburgh's title of the Athens of the North. And Edinburgh's a World Heritage Site, designated so by UNESCO. As we cleaned, and you can see some of our varying shades of sandstone. Sandstone, of course, originally started off as a desert or a beach, but after millions and millions and millions of years of pressure, sandstone is the result. And on the right-hand side, this very darkened building with the flags up at the top, they're taking their flags down. But with the turrets up at the top, lot of the spires up at the top, that is where our Parliament is sitting temporarily at the moment, waiting for the new building to be completed at the foot of the Royal Mile. And that building belongs to the Church of Scotland. It's our General Assembly building. It's Ice Age, you can just imagine it being full of water. And of course, people that lived in the old town before the new town was built, very often the richer people would have a rowing boat, and they'd row across to what is now Princes Street. But of course, in those days, they were rowing across to open countryside. Indeed for joining Chris and myself on the tour this morning. I do hope you thoroughly enjoyed it, and please enjoy the rest of your stay in Edinburgh and indeed in Scotland, and I hope the weather stays fine for you. It'd be nice if the sun came out. It's meant to be very hot over the weekend, but we haven't seen much sign of it yet. But at least it's not raining and it is quite warm.
rabbit.
बंद कर लो बंद कर लो बंद कर लो बंद कर लो
We saw Granny's steps right there. We saw Granny's steps. We would have made it down there. We would have been lost.
बंद कर लो
Show you where Granny's steps are.
The College of Medicine. Hippocrates 13 speculation.
बंद कर लो
Is that an engaged?
कर लो बंद करो ना वो बस
King George IV 1822 में ये इसको मिला है.
Stop coming up for any passengers who would now like to visit the Royal Botanic Gardens. Spend some time walking amongst the trees, the water features and the squirrels. You could admire the largest collection of Chinese plants outside of China. When I used to visit them in their Great King Street lodgings, she was always so delighted. Here's my friendy Wendy, her way of saying friend as a child would. James Barrie was heartbroken when the wee girl eventually died. In remembrance to his friend, James created the character Wendy in his novel Peter Pan. This is even more Fulbright. It was responsible for establishing St Margaret's Priory in Dunfermline, and that's why she needed the ferry. It was also Margaret who brought soul into the lives of Scottish people, as well as eating with forks and knives. On a gentleman's jacket there. Next, the clock tower of the Balmoral Hotel next to our terminus on Waverley Bridge. The spire of the hub at the top of the Royal Mile. Edinburgh Castle. And far in the distance, the Penland Hills. This year there were 207. This is Victoria Park. The houses to our left now are notable because of the flat roof features. These houses were mainly owned by merchants and traders, and they used to send servants up to sit on the roof so that they could see their ships coming into port. We're about to arrive in the 15th century port of New Haven. It was founded and on the far side, the Kingdom of Fife. When we pause at the roundabout, look directly left into the distance bridge, and also the Forth Road Bridge. The waters in front of us used to provide the local New Haven fishermen with many oyster beds. Oysters were the staple diet of the common people because oysters were plentiful and they grew them themselves. It was only progress that killed off the oyster beds, making the fish rare and expensive and therefore food of the rich. When I say progress killed off the oyster beds, I mean the engines powering boats and ships and the pollution that these inventions brought with them. By a massive storm. But luckily for the wee port of New Haven, only 4 of their boats had gone to join the fishing line. The Stormy Petrel, the Concorde, the Rabinas and the Perseverance. They were all lost at sea with all hands, and I say New Haven was lucky because in total there were 189 men lost. The next stop is the stop for the Royal Yacht Britannia. Please enter Ocean Terminal where you'll find many shops, a cinema, restaurants, the observation deck and coffee shops, but also the Royal Yacht Visitors Centre. Please show your tickets to receive a discount upon entry to Britannia. This is the stop for the Royal Yacht Britannia at Ocean Terminal.
Shopping center में जा सब बात
Times, New Scottish Parliament Information Centre, Dynamic Area, the Museum of Childhood, and of course the Royal Mile. swing bridge to your right, you'll see almost everyday passes. These new apartments on our right are available to buy, but to rent them will cost you around $1,600.
ऐसा कर लो ना एडिनबर्ग कासल है ये प्रोटेक्शन वॉल today is the last day that we have here at London. We are going towards this Buckingham Palace on the Lady Diana Memorial Walk, and then this is 7th June 2004. In the evening we'll be going to France, Paris. There are a lot of people around. It's quite sunny and everybody wants to have the full time at the sun fair. Lords. Chapel. Out of the St. James Park and Green Station. Hey. हाँ कहाँ जा रहे हो?
To the National Portrait Museum.
ये गोल्ड की नीचे आपसी गोल्ड Buckingham Palace.